the Mehdi, or the Qaim, is the long-lost king of Israel. He's the promised king from the seed of David, who will rule in the end time, and he's the one who fulfills the promise and brings those three religions together.
Wow, amazing. I'm doing well today. Thank you so much.
It's so good to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we want to talk about the Israeli people. We want to talk about the state of Israel. We want to talk about the Jewish people. We want to talk about one of the reasons why they believe that their covenant, or God's covenant with them, is an everlasting covenant and that it will never go away, and no matter what it is that they do. And what is, how do we fit this into the grand picture with the understanding of Christianity to the Old Testament and also Islam?
Okay, sounds good.
So one of the reasons why Jews believe that God's covenant with the Israelites is an everlasting covenant and will never go away is because of this promise, which is sometimes referred to as a covenant, although it is not one of those covenants that with a prophet that brings forward a new jurisprudence or a new matter. So as we've said before in previous episodes, God establishes these certain covenants with certain prophets, and with each one of them, Adam, and then Noah, and then Abraham, and then Moses, and then Jesus, and then Muhammad. Each one of these covenants that he establishes with one of these major prophets, a new jurisprudence comes, all right?
Yes.
So God's laws that he gives to Moses is different than God's laws that he gives to Jesus, and God's laws that he gives to Jesus different than the ones that he gives to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes.
But this covenant here with David is not one of those covenants, but it is a promise. It's a deal. And it's mentioned in the Old Testament, where basically, David now, he's defeated his enemies. David has overcome, all of the hostilities around him. And now David's resting. And in the Bible, David is speaking with the prophet Nathan, and he is being thankful to God. And he's saying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, God has now allowed me to rest in this house of cedar. But he's still sad. He's still a little bit distraught. And the reason why he's distraught is because he's noticing that here he is in this comfortable place and nice home. But he says, the Ark of the Covenant still dwells in the tent. So he thinks that this is wrong, that he's in this house and that the ark is still outside being hosted in a tent. And so Nathan looks at David and he says to him, David, do whatever is in your heart, for God is with you. And this is a very important indication about the type of rule that David has. He rules by means of God putting his will in the heart of David. The Holy Spirit is with David. Okay? And now we know from this verse that David, he rules by his feelings in his heart, and he doesn't rule by necessarily like evidence and cases and that way. But he rules with the feeling that he has. Okay? Whatever God places in his heart.
Yes.
And that's important for later on. And so Prophet Nathan, he goes, he has a dream, and in his dream, the Lord comes to him and he tells him, basically in the dream that, I've been dwelling in the tent and in the tabernacle ever since I brought, the Israelites out of Egypt, and I do not have a home, So go command David and tell him to build for me a home. Okay, and he gives this commandment to tell for Nathan to tell David, and Nathan goes and he tells David, and this is basically the command that is given to David to build this great temple.
Yes.
And it's the Temple of Solomon, which actually is completed by his son, because it's a big undertaking. It's a big work. And Nathan narrates to David the dream, the commandment, but also there's more to the dream than just that. God tells David on the tongue of Nathan that if you do this for me, and you're going to do it for me, he says, I'm also going to do something for you. I'm going to make a home too for your people. I'm going to plant them here, in Israel. So that way they don't have to, wander around anymore. So now I've made a house for your people. You've made a house for me. I've made a house for your people. And I'm going to make a house for you, David, an everlasting house in which my name will rule forever.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so God establishes in this one dream of Nathan's the commandment to build the temple, which is the house of God.
Yes.
And he also establishes that Israel is home now for the Israelites.
Yeah.
And he also establishes that the rulers for Israel forever will be from the lineage or the house of David.
Yes.
So he establishes the house of David, the monarchy for Israel.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay?
I see.
It's no longer going to be a thing where he picks Joshua, son of Nun, to rule for a while, and then from another family he picks somebody else. No, he picks David and his lineage.
Yes, I see. That there's this sort of transition from what had been before in the time of the judges, in the time of Samuel, like leading even Saul. Then David establishes this dynasty, which passes down to his son. Yeah, there's this change at that point.
Yes. Yeah. And then God tells David, and I'm going to be with you forever. He says, anybody from this house that does iniquity, I'm going to punish them with a rod, and I'm going to beat them by the violence of the hands of man. So he's not going to tolerate any injustices to come from the rulers from the house of David, but he says, but I will never leave you. My mercy will never leave you.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So it means what? It means that no matter what you do, even if you are, even if there's oppressors that come out of you through this lineage, no matter what it is that you do, you're going to get the karma for it. Bad things will happen to you, but I'm never, ever, ever going to leave you. God will forever rule, and God of the worlds will forever be with Israel and be with the house of David in particular.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
That's pretty clear.
It is very clear. From this notion now, from this is one of the reasons why the Israelis, the Jews, they consider that, God had given them this promise, and there's no true God, there's no good God that will ever break his promise. And that is why the understanding came that the Messiah who was going to rule in the future had to be from the line of David.
Yes.
And even in Isaiah, which they take to, be talking about the Messiah, what does it say about the root?
That he will bring up a root from Jesse, a stump from Jesse. So that's
a stump from Jesse.
Yes. So
the root of David.
The root of David, yeah.
So it's the lineage of David.
Yes.
Somebody who's connected to David who will rule.
Yes.
Okay. So there you have this issue, and then you have the Christians. Now they understood it in the same way that the Jews understood it, And for that reason, it was very important for them to establish this connection that Jesus has to King David.
Yes.
Because if that connection is not established, then he's automatically disqualified from being, a ruler or the Messiah or a king that's chosen for Israel. Because God already promised David that any king that he would choose, anybody that would have the right to rule, would have to be from the lineage of David.
Yes.
And so they start off actually the book of Matthew with the genealogy of Jesus,
yes.
In which they count back his ancestors through his father.
Yeah.
And they say that he's the son of, that Joseph, and Joseph's the son of such and such, such and such, such and such, all the way back till King David himself.
Yes, exactly. That's why this gospel has to start off like that, because this is one of the main proofs for Jesus. Yes.
So now Christianity and Judaism, they're aligned on this aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have Islam, and the main conflict now is between Muslims and between Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And you see on the world stage right now, Christians are sticking by Jews. And one of the reasons why they're sticking by Jews is because of that.
Yeah.
This understanding that God would forever be with the house of David.
Yes.
In the house of David, the tribe of Judah,
yeah,
one of the tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
And so therefore God is forever with Israel.
Yes.
But the Muslims come now, and the Muslims have a new prophet that's sent to them, and that's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
And the Muslims are disconnected. I mean, they from this concept of the house of David.
Yes, they're not a part of the house of David.
No,
so
they're not a part of the house of David.
They pop up somewhere else.
Yeah. And they revere Prophet David, and they consider him to be a prophet, and they love him. And he's one of the 25 prophets that are known to be mentioned by name in the Quran. So they love him, but they don't have a belief that his house will always have God with them.
Okay.
So then we have Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He comes, he establishes the religion of Islam, but he's establishing it as a worldwide religion. And this is what's agitating the Jews. If Muhammad had just come and said that I am a prophet, but not to the Bani Israel, not to the children of Israel, they would have had no problem with him probably.
Yeah.
But it was because Muhammad was insisting that he was a prophet that everybody in the whole world had to follow.
Okay.
Even the Israelites.
Okay.
See, the Israelites, they coexisted before with prophets that were non-Hebrew prophets that were sent to other nations, and they had no problem with that.
Yeah.
Balaam ibn Ba'ura, Balaam the son of Beor, in their text, in their stories, according to their beliefs, was a prophet who was at almost to the same rank as Moses, but to the he actually was at the same rank as Moses, but to the non-Israelites.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. Yeah.
They had no problem with this concept that God would send prophets to other people, but as long as they saw it as like an inferior jurisprudence that they would come with.
They're like the chosen.
They're the chosen people.
So yeah, they have this special deal with God. It makes sense. They have this special deal. Their family, the descendants of Abraham through Isaac, have this special deal, but God still comes to others in a different way, in a lesser way.
Yeah. But Muhammad is not leaving alone this idea that no, everybody has to follow me.
Okay.
Yeah. And he, out of the prophets that are mentioned in the Bible, he's mentioning the names mainly of Hebrew prophets.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Quran, it's mentioning Jesus, it's mentioning John, it's mentioning Zechariah, it's mentioning Elijah, it's mentioning Elisha,
yes.
It's mentioning all these different, it's mentioning Ezekiel. So all of these different Hebrew prophets, there's a focus on it.
Yes.
And so it's like, Adam, Noah, a few Arab prophets like Hud and Shu'aib and Saleh. And then And then you have Israelites, Israelites, Israelites. Moses is the most mentioned one. And then Jesus. And then it's like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
As if, and Muhammad sees himself as continuing along that path.
Yes.
And even there's certain narrations that state that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to actually braid his hair, much like the Israelites. They have these forelocks, these braids that are on the sides of their head. The Prophet Muhammad, instead of 2, he had 4, and they were on the sides of his head as well. And we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took in the beginning as a direction of worship the same temple that was a symbol of the Davidic rule, which was the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah.
Because now, this temple has more meaning than it just being a place, a Kaaba type place where the people go, in order to worship, or more than just a house of God, but it's a symbol of the rule of God's chosen monarchy.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Okay, it is very interesting. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passes away, and in his will he mentions that after him is going to be 12 imams, and then after that are going to be 12 Mahdis. And the last of the imams is Imam al-Mahdi, and then there comes the rule of these Mahdis. And as we mentioned in the other episode that we did, the previous episode, about how we said that, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that I am Israel, that this is one of his names, right? And we established that fact. It's interesting because we find this reference to the Prophet David coming up again in Islamic narrations, but only in the time of the Qaim, okay? And the time of the Mehdi.
Okay.
And there's a few really, really interesting narrations. One of them is that the Mehdi, it says that the Mehdi, his body is the body of an Israelite.
Really?
Yes.
Very interesting.
His body is the body of an Israelite, or a man from the sons of Israel.
Okay.
So
it's very interesting. We spoke about how Prophet Muhammad called himself Israel, so it could have to do with this narration or something else.
And then you have another narration which states that when it comes time for the Mehdi to call forward, when he wants his companions, what does he do? He makes a dua, and he calls upon God by his Hebrew name.
Okay.
And then all of his companions come to him. So now this Mehdi, this Qaim, he's worshiping God, but he's worshiping God in Hebrew. He knows the secret name of God. And we're going to do a whole episode that has to do with the Jewish belief on the idea of God having a secret name. But in short, God had a secret name that only the king or the priests that were chosen by God would know. And it was a safeguarded secret. And this name is represented by the 4 letters, YHWH, that is in the Old Testament. And so nobody knows the true pronunciation of the name of God, but it's represented by these 4 letters. It's forbidden for anybody who to even pronounce the name of God. And you have people that pronounce it by saying Yahweh. Other sects of Christianity have come forward and have said, no, the correct pronunciation, for example, is Jehovah, right? Or other distorted forms by filling in vowels in between those 4 letters in order to figure out what the name is. And Jewish people, out of respect, they use the word Hashem to refer to God. So Hashem means the God. Hashem is like the Hebrew equivalent of Allah. Okay? And it's interesting to note, because if Hashem means the God, Well, we know also that Muhammad was sent as a descendant from the sons of Hashim, the Bani Hashim.
Yeah.
Oh. And God, when he was talking to David in the dream of Nathan, he says to them, I will be their father, meaning the monarchs that come after you. You and the monarchs, I will be your father, their father, and they will be like my sons. If they make inequities or mistakes, I'm going to punish them. Okay? Here you have now Muhammad. He's coming from the Bani Hashim. Hashim has a very significant name in Hebrew to the Jewish people. Yeah. But nonetheless, let's put that aside.
Okay.
2 narrations so far. One is that he has the body of an Israeli. 2, now he's speaking Hebrew and he's making dua in the Hebrew language.
Yeah.
Then we come to the 3rd narration, which is the most important of all. It says that the Qaim, or the Mehdi, is going to rule by so it comes in 2 forms, but he's going to rule by the rule of David, or he's going to rule by the rule of the house of David.
Okay.
So this has a double meaning. One of them is that he rules by what is placed in his heart, just like David ruled. And this, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they clarified. So he rules by the Holy Ghost. And it's known that the Mehdi, and in many narrations, this is clarified, that he goes forward and in the apparent, like his companion wouldn't have made a mistake or made a sin, and he will, judge him because he knows what's in his heart. So just as God was with David, God in the same way is with the Mehdi. Just like Nathan told David, do whatever's in your heart, for God is with you. The same thing applies to the Mehdi, where he also does whatever is in his heart, because everything that's in his heart, God put there.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
But it says he'll rule by the rule of the house of David. And the ruling of the rule of David and the ruling of the rule of the house of David, if a Jewish person would hear that, they would only understand it in one way, and that is that the Mehdi is from the house of David.
Yeah.
Is that not how you would understand it?
That's what logically makes sense from that statement, yes.
So now we have a Mehdi whose body is the body of an Israeli, meaning that what's a body? I mean, you have to be a descendant from one of the children of Israel in order to have a body of an Israelite. He has, according to the narration, his body is the body of an Israeli. So he is one of the children of Israel. That's the Mahdi. And he speaks Hebrew. At the very least, he knows the secret name of God in Hebrew. And the third is that he is a descendant from the house of David. He is the stump of Jesse and the root of David. And so now we have an entirely new picture that's coming into place.
That's shocking.
Here's what it is. The picture is that when Israel is established in the end time, they go to Israel, they build the state, but they're unable to build the temple. They're unable to. And they've been trying to for many, many years. And they know and they believe that when the temple is built, that their Messiah will accompany that. Because the house of God always accompanies the monarch or the house of David, or that person from the house of David. When his temple is built, his deal is fulfilled, he brings forward the king as well. And so they want to build the temple because they're waiting for their Messiah. And at the same time, the Christians believe that when they do build that temple, that Jesus will return, because Jesus is that Messiah. And so we have a picture where the true king, the Mehdi, who actually is just like the rest of most of Israel, scattered tribes, he's an individual who is appointed by God, who has a right to rule over Israel as the descendant from David and the promised one who's mentioned in Isaiah. But he's being held back from that because the Israelites are not recognizing him. So we have a king from the house of David in the end time who, much like David himself, was not recognized in the beginning by the Israelites before he was anointed. And he was just a shepherd in the same way the Mehdi is outcast. And it's interesting because it is the character of the Mehdi that actually opens up Jerusalem. And he's the one who frees Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, and nobody else does, because it has to be this character who's a king who was supposed to rule Jerusalem, who would be also the Messiah from the line of David, if you want to think of it that way. Although he's the Mahdi and the true Messiah, he came, and that was Jesus. Now, this one is going to rule as that person from Isaiah, who comes as the successor to Jesus and the successor to David and the successor to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That makes so much sense. It makes so much sense how they have not been able to do. They've been really trying, and they have the support of the Christians. They have not been able to reestablish the temple, and it's part of the prophecies that the temple must be there in order for the Messiah to come. And they can't do it. And why can't they do it? Because it is written that it will only be the right person. It will only be the person, the Mahdi, as you said, who will open up Jerusalem. He will be the one who is able to do God's will.
And there's actually more proof that the Mahdi is this king from the lineage of David, even though he himself doesn't know it, just like the Israelite people didn't know in the beginning until he figures out and remembers who he is and is told who he is by God. And those are the narrations that it's the Mahdi too that brings forward the Ark of the Covenant. And it's the Mahdi too who comes forward, and he has with him the staff of Moses and the ring of Solomon.
Wow. He's clearly from this lineage. He's clearly from this story. But that's so interesting. It's such a fascinating take, because I think that it would be really shocking for many Muslims to hear all of this put together, because that's not what they're expecting from the Mahdi. And certainly that's not what the Jewish people are expecting from the Mahdi, or the Christians. So this is just amazing.
They should expect it, because even Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, according to the Shia narrations, his mother is Nerjis, and Nerjis is a Roman princess who actually is a descendant of Simon Peter, according to the narration. So she has this Jewish ancestry according to that. So the Shia, they already believe that the Mahdi is mixed. He's half Roman, or in reality half Jewish through the descendant of Simon Peter, and he's half Arab. And so now all of the narrations are making sense. That the Mehdi, or the Qaim, is the long lost king of Israel. He's the promised king from the seed of David, who will rule in the end time. And he's the one who fulfills the promise and brings those three religions together.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. He's a true Israelite. You know, as we talked about previously, this concept of people posing as Israelites when they don't have the right to call themselves that. He is the true. He's truly from this lineage.
So the Mahdi is Arab, and he's Hashimi. He's a son of the Bani Hashim.
Yes.
And he is a successor from the family of Muhammad alayhi salam. And he's a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But his body is descendant from David and from the tribe of Judah. And he is an Israeli.
That's amazing.
And he is Jewish. So the Mahdi is Jewish and the Mahdi is Muslim.
Wow. Wow. And he comes for all mankind. So, of course, this makes sense, how he is the one to come and unite the world. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing that he bridges those two warring, faiths, and he brings them together. That's amazing.
Well, we'll stop there and we'll continue, inshallah, in another episode. Thank you so much for joining me, Tiffany.
Thank you so much for having me. That was such an enlightening discussion. I'm really blown away with what I've learned today, and I hope that you are too. I think that now we have such a deeper understanding of these passages in the Old Testament where God is speaking of this everlasting bond with David and with the house of David and with his lineage. Some people have mistook these verses to be speaking about a covenant, but as we discussed, we have the covenants. We have the covenant with Adam, with Noah, with Abraham, with Moses, and David was actually just a part of the covenant with Moses. But what he was speaking about was a covenant, but it was a covenant to come, and that is the covenant of the Mehdi. That is the covenant in our time. And that's really amazing. And it's no coincidence that the symbol of the seventh covenant is the Star of David, because the Mehdi is from the house of David. It's really amazing to learn. I feel every time we have these discussions, my understanding of scripture from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is just so much richer. I hope you will join us next time, and thank you so much for tuning in.